Hey everyone, and welcome to the next edition of the Snapchat. I'm joined, as I always am, by Cozy Snap. Cozy, I have been trying to do slight different intros. We've gotten hundreds of episodes where I've done the exact same intro every single time. And listen, talking about introductions, you called me out on the prior episode on your side there for not watching the trailer for the upcoming movie. And guess what, sir? In between breaks, in between recording, I did watch it. It looks pretty badass. So, I am officially excited for the new Captain America movie.
Oh, nice. Okay. Yeah. What are you excited about?
I'm just excited for what looks like a high budget Marvel attempt at like righting the ship. Cause like, okay, so this might sound crazy, but it took me a long time to finally watch Deadpool Wolverine. I only watched it last week. And one of my favorite parts in it was when Deadpool welcomes Wolverine and says, "We're in a bit of a low point, by the way."
Dude, I can't believe you just saw that movie. And what are like honesty hour, what are the biggest movies you haven't seen that you know are like people would be mad at in Marvel?
In Marvel? Oh man, I don't know. I think it was Deadpool and Wolverine. Right now, like my wife and I only get to watch like 15, 20 minutes of a movie every night before one of us passes out. We're currently watching Love and Thunder.
Okay. Oof.
Well, she likes it actually. And we just watched the Russell Crowe part. That's where we're at.
Okay. That was a movie. That was definitely a movie. Have you seen Black Panther 2?
Oh yeah, I have. That was great. I thought it was awesome. I love like the storyline with Nakia and everything like that.
Have you seen like Thor Ragnarok, like the classics?
Oh, that's awesome. I love it. That's where Surger's from. Are you kidding me?
Doctor Strange.
That's one of my favorite opening scenes.
Doctor Strange.
Oh yeah, I saw in the Universe of Madness or the Multiverse of Madness.
First
That's
one.
what Chavez is.
The first one.
I have seen the first one. Yeah, and actually I loved the first one.
Yeah,
I thought it was
good.
great. I thought it was such a like those like those stories like the origin stories I find so fascinating. They're so cool.
Ooh, I
and
know
actually,
one.
you know what? The first Thor I like too. I like that like fish out of water type thing where he's like walking around as like an Asgardian and as a human. It's kind of funny.
I know what you haven't seen that I feel like you haven't seen it and you need to because there's a new version series coming out to it. Have you seen Daredevil, the show?
No, I've never seen Daredevil.
So good. It's one of those you don't have to be a Marvel fan to enjoy. Like, at all.
I haven't watched any of the What Ifs either, and I heard they're really good.
Do Daredevil before those, for sure.
Daredevil before
very
those?
Good,
okay.
Yeah, good series. And I think in March, it's missed opportunity. They're not doing a season for it. I don't know why, but yeah, it's definitely just give it a shot, Mr. Alex Coccia.
Yeah, I get really excited because it's cool being like, oh, I know who that guy is, right?
Yeah,
just like when I was watching, I watch all these movies and I'm like, I told my wife, I'm like, that's Gore. I know who Gore is. I'm like, and then like, it starts to make more sense how their abilities are surprisingly tied to their kind of powers to some degree. And I think that's something that Snap does really well. They kind of capture the essence of the character in the card very often, which I think is really cool. And talking about really cool, Cozy, you know what I thought was really cool?
What?
I thought that Iron Patriot was pretty cool. We're going to start with our review of the cards. We're going to hold ourselves accountable, Cozy. And Iron Patriot was a season pass card in Marvel Snap, for those that may not have realized. And Iron Patriot, statistically, now this surprised me. This really surprised me. Now we're using the entire month, 30 days, statistics, untapped, 6,000 collection level and above, infinite only stats. Across all decks in that month, Iron Patriot ran a 50.6% win rate, which is way lower than I expected. However, a 27% popularity, but there were decks that were outliers that were running 53, 54, and 55% win rates, some of them being Airsham at 55%. And so the decks where Iron Patriot kind of really found its footing in, I think it became a really solid addition to. But this was also something that we had mentioned in the past where this was very much so a card that could go anywhere. And believe it or not, it went everywhere.
Yeah, this is definitely one of the most enjoyable cards on release and then even post and after that I like a lot. I think Iron Patriot's one of my favorite cards released in a long time. Just solid across the board. I think we nailed it too in our early evaluations. What did we give it?
You gave it a 5. I gave it a 4.5 because there was another card I wanted to give the honorary 5 to. But it was also, both of us, the top card of the month. We had both indicated that it was the top card of the month in our final rankings. And so I think we nailed it. I think it ultimately does come out on top.
Yeah.
However, I think there are some other cards that might, in terms of their niche, might amplify their reach for those niches more. Right? And we'll discuss those when we get there. But overall, I think that Iron Patriot is a very good addition to collections. I wonder if it has the staying power, because it feels like there's so much competition at the 2 slot now. And it seems to be only getting harder and harder. I mean, Sam Wilson is literally a 2-3, right? So the competition's getting so fierce, and I wonder if Iron Patriot falls off, because we don't see Jeff anymore.
Yeah, I think it's going to stay. I think there's enough it factor in it. I mean, and just the style of play that it has, I don't see it, I just don't see it dropping off right away. I feel like it's much more like Jeff is more plug and playable, but this just has infinite reach in a lot of ways. I don't know. I don't see it go anywhere. That's just me personally too, because I'm going to play it a lot.
Yep. And do you think he is the card of the month?
Yeah. I mean, for me.
Yeah, I can see him over time being the card of the month. And so, yeah, definitely, if you bought the season pass, I think it was a pretty good return in terms of the actual power. Obviously, the weekend missions with the gold, and of course, everything else you unlocked. Season pass continues to be one of the better values in Snap. As long as you don't buy the super expensive version, that makes absolutely no sense. So that is Iron Patriot, and we are reaffirming our position that it was an absolutely top card. Now we're going to move to Victoria Hand. And now this is where things get a little choppy. Cozy, you had given a 4.5. I had given a 4.5. But I said that emotionally, this was my 5. That this was the card that I was most excited for. Still said 4.5, but this was like my 5 I'm excited for card. And in early testing, it certainly did appear that way. Running decks in the 54% win rate range. Those were the Wiccan, Iron Patriot-based shells. They also included Frigate and Speed. We talked about those on those initial review days. However, on aggregate for the month, Infinite-only statistics, Victoria Hand ran a 49% win rate at a 13% popularity. A 49% win rate is much lower than I would expect on aggregate. Now, that also does account for a lot of the experimentation that was happening. And but the primary decks that have been solidified are not reaching much above 54% win rate, which would indicate that it is perhaps weaker than expected. However, we say this all the time, so I ask you, Cozy, is this one of those cards that's going to age like fine wine?
Yeah, I think so. I don't. This is one of those that I'm kind of. It's maybe not the same thing as Frigga, but I'm just closing my eyes. I mean, Frigga had no question 40 something whenever we did the interview for her. I think that it's just a lot more niche, but in that niche, it's solid, and we're gonna get more of what this does. I don't know if it'll age as well as something like Frigga, but I do think it's gonna be fine.
Yeah, and when we talk about statistics, it's also worth mentioning is, like, we're kind of like incorporating statistics during a lot of that testing phase, right? Because there's different approaches, right? We can talk about the last 7 days of statistics, or in order to get a larger sample size, we can talk about the month in aggregate. And that's what we're doing in this case. And here we're seeing that she ran a lower percentage win rate overall, but looking at the most recent decks, they're still only getting into the 54 percentile range, whereas we were getting higher percentage rates on the Iron Patriot. So clearly she is weaker than Iron Patriot. However, I do think she's a good card. And bring up Frigga is a great example of that, because Frigga was not impressive on release. And I think we both gave her good reviews. I liked Frigga. I thought this card was so cool. And she still ended up getting buffed from a 3-3 to a 3-4. And I actually think you called that in advance, by the way. I do remember specifically you literally like implanting the thought into Glenn's mind. And then now Frigga is the reason why that move shell got bounced. We talked about in the OTA recap. The whole reason why that move shell absolutely popped off was because you were able to Frigga like the inexpensive little movers and bounce them and then Frigga them and I'll do all that kind of stuff, right? I think that Victoria Hand might be in a similar position. I think this is a good card. Ignore the stats. If you have it in your collection, be happy with it because you're going to pull it out again soon.
Yeah, and I would say on stats, man, I think you like stats a bit more than I do. I'm not crazy about stats representing where cards are all that much, especially now when there were so many people playing in that what Untapped was able to just get a huge pool of players. Like, that to me is just a lot different than it is now. And also just like, let's say Rivals, for example. I don't let stats speak to a tier list in my head because there's so many factors that go into that, right? If we would have done that with Frigga, we would have been dead wrong. So it's tough. Like, there's a lot of things that go into those stats, making them lower, right? Testing phase, but other so for me personally, like, if I see a 49, I'm not like, oh, it whiffed. So I don't know. But in that regard, I think Victoria Hand maybe wasn't exactly where we had her at, but I still think she's fine.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. And I like what you're saying about stats as well, because you could be someone who just solely fixates on the meta and just wants to play the statistical best stuff. Then you might be cutting a lot of the enjoyment out of the game, right? And yeah, I absolutely do agree. And stats aren't everything. We also, of course, we do have a reduction in the amount of information we're getting because there are simply less games being played. And so, yes, absolutely, Cozy, I do agree. And that's going to take us to Moonstone. Now, Moonstone is interesting from a standpoint that we both were at the 3 range. I gave Moonstone a 3.5. And that was because I said I could see Moonstone potentially reaching in that like 3 to 4 range. So I went 3.5. You were pretty stern at 3. Was it clumsier? Yes. Did it find its spot? Perhaps. The top decks you're currently seeing it are Wiccan-based shells that are running anywhere between a 52 and a 54% win rate. Now, considering that other season pass cards in the past, like even something like Asserter was in the 57% win rate range, right? Now, obviously, it's not a season pass card. It's a poor comparison. But we're looking at like these win rates that are a little on the lower end. She seems to be underperforming. However, we're looking at Sam Wilson, where you have a month coming out with some more ongoing cards. So is Moonstone's time to shine still coming?
Yeah, I think we said that about her in our initial reviews. Just like because she covers 3 and lower, that's so many I mean, just with our the new cards coming this month, we add 3 new cards to her ability, right? Or technically 4. So like every month she has the ability to shine more and more. Like even just this month, right? That shield is going to make her not be able to be destroyed if it goes into her lane. Like that adds a big value to her. There's a lot of cool things that I think that can happen with her. So I love the future of Moonstone.
Yeah, and honestly, the decks that I saw her being played with, which included ongoing base shells, that had like the speeds in them, right? Which is why Wiccan was being used so effectively. The speeds, the Friggas, like those were great. I often had games where where Moonstone was getting well above 10 power. Like if you're thinking, oh, I never had I keep saying Victoria Hand. I never had Moonstones in Shang-Chi range. I'm like, but you're playing her incorrectly. Because I had regular Moonstones in Shang-Chi range. Yeah. Like I had massive Moonstones. Clefairies were all over the place. And at the end of the day, like I think the card has a tremendous amount of potential. Moreover, it has the Silver Surfer effect, where every single 1, 2, and 3 that comes out, you're going to be looking at and saying, okay, hold on. It's an ongoing 1, 2, or 3. What does Moonstone think about it? And so I do think that it provides, is it a design challenge moving forward? Perhaps. But it's one of those cards that ultimately will feel somewhat irreplaceable when it becomes a mainstay in a deck, if that makes any sense.
Yep, agreed.
Cozy, next up as part of our conversation is Bullseye. Now this is, I'll tell you right off the bat, we put him right at the bottom. We were like, Bullseye is probably the worst card of the month. We didn't necessarily say that, but I think we did say it actually. I think we were kind of pretty low on Bullseye. And lo and behold, isn't it the way it always is? Bullseye ends up being not only good, but literally your boy's shell. It was the one that led the way at a 56% win rate for the entire month, one of the top played decks in Marvel Snap during that time frame. And it had Frigga in it, by the way. And, that's awesome. We love to see that. Bullseye was great. The Bullseye was absolutely phenomenal. It did showcase some of the growing pains of Snap, like the fast forward animations and stuff like that. But Bullseye himself did very well. In terms of the aggregate statistics, we're looking at a 50% flat win rate at a 9% popularity. That's for the entire month. But some of the decks were running 56%, 54%, and the Zola variant was running in the 55% range as well, which is pretty cool to see. So as a whole, Bullseye did impress.
Did it impress, though, temporarily? Like, is it going to be, you think, something like a Scorn impressed? Or, because Scorn, same thing, right? Was like, oh, wow, it was performing really well, and it fell off. What do you think about it, right? Is it going to continue to do well?
Does it have the staying power?
Yeah.
That's a great question. And that's actually something I've thought about a lot in Snap. And we'll get to it in the power creep stuff too. It's like one of those things where it's like, you want to invest in a card. And I find this as a content creator. It's like, I kind of just want to play Bullseye all the time, but I can't. I got to test the new thing. I got to play the new, and if something is too good, I can't play that either. So I never get to really just play what I want until I'm offline. I just cope and play Surfer nonstop. But does he have the staying power? Is he the new de facto version of discard? If everyone in Marvel Snap was just to play discard nonstop, and you had traditional APOC Drac discard, you had Black Knight discard, you had Bullseye discard, would the Bullseye version actually outperform those, or is it the flavor of the month? I don't know if I have an answer to that. It certainly would outperform the Black Knight version, but straight up traditional discard is good. Like, it's really good. Because, like, if you think about the Bullseye shells, they're not running traditional good cards like Proxima, right? They don't have Proxima in there. You don't have, like, the Moon Knight Proxima and Apocalypse Synergy. Fenris is making a bit of a comeback right now because of the next card we're going to talk about, in Ares and Surtur and everything like that. I don't know, Cozy. That's a great question. What do you think?
I'm just not like I think Iron Patriot is gonna be much better for sure in the long run. Over like I guess that's something to compare to niches. I guess personally, like if we're gonna re-rank these, where would you put Bullseye? I guess he's the last one, right? So I guess that's a fair place to say.
Well, no, he's not the last one. We got the God of War.
We got Ares too. So when we get there, I'm gonna be curious where you would put him and compared to the other cards, because it goes a little bit with the stats conversation. But yeah, definitely marks two things, right? Fun and good. Those are always, two things that we like, to measure and snap, especially nowadays. And so that's good. It's hard for me to recommend him.
No, I agree. And it's really hard to recommend cards that are so wildly niche, where it's like, oh, if you play discard in exactly these versions of discard, then sure, right?
Yeah.
And I think what was kind of like a beneficial thing is that if you didn't have Frigga, you could literally sub Frigga and add Zola, and the deck still functioned. It still worked. And I think that was kind of a good thing. But we did mention the God of War, so let's move on to the God of War. We'll talk about final rankings afterwards as well. But I came in at a 4. You came in at 3.5, and I think I might have talked you into a 4 at the end, because you ended up dropping the 4 for Ares. And my friend, we said it on the Snapchat. We were like, you know what? Sometimes there's something nice about playing the big dumb guy that just slams points down. I like the dueling element. I think the animation's fun. I think it's a cool card, and it's performing very well. A 52% win rate and a 6% popularity, and these Surtur decks are running 58 and 59% win rates. Like, they are banging right now. Statistically, Ares is going to be the highest performing card of the month from a win rate statistical standpoint. And that doesn't surprise me. We were pretty high on him, and he's performing.
Yeah, as was Cole Obsidian back in February of last year, right? It was the same thing. And the reason I gave him a 3.5, I guess, at the end, is it's the same exact thing. It's like Cole fell off.
You went to 4 in the end.
Yeah, and Cole fell off, though, too. Oh, I went to 4. Okay. But regardless, Cole fell off eventually. Like, that train, because it's the same style of deck, blah, blah, blah. And if it's at 58%, we know that the devs are going to attack it aggressively in a future OTA if it stays at that. Doesn't take away from him being a great card. Love that about him. And he's not win more with that deck. He's just win better, like more consistently. We know his stat line's great. Good card around the board. If that is your style of deck, you can't go wrong with Ares for sure. And it's the definition of a card that will do better over time.
No, he's great. I really liked him. In my review, I was like, I like this card. I felt like I was the only one, too. I felt like a lot of people were down on Ares. I'm like, I think they're wrong, man. I think this card's legit. Yeah. I thought it was fun. And like, even when we talk about like cards that are coming out, we have a lot of like complicated combo piece cards. Like we joked about like, this is actually a 3-card combo. I think that Ares these types of designs are kind of beautiful.
Yeah.
Right? They're straightforward, but they're fun. They're engaging. They are high stakes. They're low stakes. The ceiling's high. The floor is low. But you can mitigate, like, you can play the Cassandra Novas. You could play the Okoyes if you want, or you can just play the Chonky Boys. You can keep an eye on your deck tracker, figure out exactly what your odds are, right? You could kind of poke at, like, okay, well, what deck are they playing with their first couple hands? You could kind of insinuate how you will fare with the Ares play. You can play them on turn 6, right? I think there was a lot of things in terms of flexibility that was beneficial. And once again, we say this all the time, cards might be one tricks, but if they're one tricks in a deck that's really good, like, yeah, he's a one trick inserter for the most part, but he's crushing it there. And those decks have always been good. And this is post-nerf. Surtur got nerfed, as did Scar. And we're still seeing them pump. And that deck also got hit because Alioth got changed from a 6'10 to a 6'9. Those decks had Alioth in them. That was 3 nerfs to that shell. And now you add Ares, and he pumps it right back up. So I think the shell's good. I think Surtur's the way to play him. There was a special shout out to the mill version. There was a mill version going on with Misery and stuff like that, where basically the idea is like you just destroy their deck and then Ares always by default wins. It wasn't as consistent from an Ares standpoint, but it was a hell of a lot of fun to play.
Cool design,
yeah, it was a cool design. It was really fun. Wasn't as effective from a win rate perspective. Like, I'm actually looking at it right now. It had a 49% win rate with negative cubes, but it was fun. It was definitely fun. So let's talk final rankings, Cozy. Okay. This was my list. And let's see. Actually, let's just do both. Okay. We almost identical, actually. Oh my gosh. Wait, no, we did. We did have identical lists. We both went Iron Patriot, Victoria Hand, Ares, Moonstone, Bullseye. And ours were identical. Wow.
Okay.
How do we change that?
So starting at 1 or 6?
Let's start at 1. Iron Patriot, I think, is correct.
Yeah, I think Iron Patriot's still 1. Who's your 2?
Victoria Hand was number 2 for us.
Yeah, who's your 2 now?
Who's my 2 now? I would probably go Ares.
You'd go Ares at 2?
Yes.
Yeah, man, that's tough. I'm just trying to think of like Cole Obsidian, how he aged. Like I would almost go. I like Moonstone's future, man. I really do. I think Moonstone's got some really good power ahead of her and time ahead of her, but just it's not showing. Yeah, I guess Ares. Yeah, we had him at 3, right? So I guess I would have him at 2 now. Okay, who's 3 now?
And then I would go Bullseye.
Bullseye 3. This is where I would go Moonstone.
Then Moonstone, and then ironically Victoria Hand would probably be the weakest, but like I don't like that either.
Yeah, it's weird.
I feel like I like Victoria Hand more than I like Moonstone.
This is tough. This is tough to have any loser because a lot of them are going to have
their spot.
Yeah, they're going to have their spot. Like it's the opposite of this next coming month where I think most of these are fine. It reminds me of like I think the Frigga month was this way. So tough to rank them top to bottom. I think we got Patriot right. Obviously Bullseye was much better than we thought. And I want to see how the niche plays down the road.
Yeah, and I think that the problem is if Surtur and that shell gets hit again, then Ares dies off. Like he has not proven himself in those other shells. And so as a result, like he's definitely a one trick that's really reliant on that one deck doing well. And it's like the Madam Web situation. Madam Web can be great, but if that shell's not working or if it's missing something, or it's missing 1 or 2 pieces, then that whole thing doesn't perform, right? So very interesting discussion, which also leads us into the next really interesting discussion, Cozy, about power creep. Now, the reason why we're talking about this is on Reddit, there was a very interesting post by Resolve Asleep, that's the Reddit user, okay. And you see the graphic on the screen here, and it was comparing Ares to the Guardians of the Galaxy. And they had stated that Ares looks at the top, obviously we know what Ares does, +6 power, looks at the top 3 cards of your deck. And then when you look at the Guardians, and the amount of hoops you have to jump through for like Drax, Groot, Star-Lord, and maybe with the exception of Gamora, they never reach that power level. Like Drax is so much worse than Ares, it's not even funny. And so it got me thinking about a discussion about power creep. Because we want new cards to be exciting, but at the same time, Drax, why the hell would you play Drax ever when you can just play Ares? Like really, how much easier is Ares and how much more predictable is Ares compared to something like a Drax? And so it kind of brought this idea of power creep. So Cozy, my question to you is, do you think Ares is power crept Guardians of the Galaxy?
It's why I think OTAs are so important, because it's like, yeah, we're going to have OTAs every now and then have like one PowerPoint. I think it's just the wrong idea. I think there's so many freaking things to do with this game, and you could go through the theory of not every card needs to be good, and I think that's fine in a card like or a game like Pokemon Pocket, Hearthstone, where you open up these packs and there's tons and tons of cards, right? But in the model of Snap, I think every card deserves to have a shot to be pretty playable, right? And it's just puzzling to me. There's so much to do in cards that need love, and then, you know, XYZ gets its 20th adjustment. And so, yeah, I mean, for sure, right? At this point, Guardians are more or less a joke of a play style, and there's many that fit that role. And so, we want new cards to be good and to have their place, but I think it's important in these OTAs to get the old ones right.
And you have Ares as a 4/6. Cozy, I'm going to say a couple cards in the 4 cost, and you tell me if this is power creep. White Queen, a 4/6.
Yeah.
Versus Ares is 4/6.
Yeah, right. Definitely.
How about The Thing, who also got nerfed from High Evo, by the way, but you have The Thing.
Just vanilla cards have aged horribly in the game. Yeah. So, yeah. Rescue. Can you talk about Rescue?
Rescue is the next one I have on the list. Rescue like, is it even worth it, right? Like,
Rescue,
unbelievable.
Compared to Ares, Rescue's a 4/4 that goes to a 4/9. Ares is a 4/6 that goes to a 4/12. That one's laughable.
And you know exactly where your opponent's
so
going to play on the rescue turn. And you can't play it on turn 6, where you can play Ares on turn 6.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Absolute garbage. And like, talking about the 2-drops, we were talking about Iron Patron, stuff like that. Like, we joke about Lizard. How power crept has Lizard gotten? Like, there's no reason to play this card at all. And it's crazy because like it's so competitive at the 2 slot. Because Marvel Snap has 6 to 7 turns. those early turns matter, and we've always wanted that. But it feels like that 2 slot is becoming so insanely competitive.
Yeah.
That like something like a lizard can't even support itself. It's literally unplayable compared to an Iron Patriot.
Yeah, I mean, even Maximus is hitting that threshold. It's like there used to be these builds for it, but now it's like a 2-cost either does something for your deck, or it's like it has a multi-facet. Like Spider-Man now is a 2/4, and it moves that card over, which is A, disrupting your opponent, B, building up maybe a move deck, and it's 2/4. Like there's so much going on with that card, and Lizard is a 2/5. That becomes a 2/1.
The thing I think about is like, can you imagine if Lizard was in the Spotlight cache? If that was like the new card coming, what would you give it star-wise? 1? It has to be a 1, right?
Definite 1, yeah. It would make Thaddeus Ross look like a 5-star.
And remember, when Lizard got nerfed, it was the least consequential nerf in the history of Marvel Snap, is what they put in the developer note. And that card died. And we called it, by the way. We called it here on the Snapchat. You heard it here first. You were never going to see a Lizard ever again. And then, like, talking more about it, what about something like the 3 costs? What about Bishop? We have Luna Snow. That's a 3/6.
Or just
Bishop
Joaquin.
is a 3/1.
Yeah,
Yeah, Joaquin as well.
Joaquin's a 3/4 that doubles up. You know, Joaquin's going to, like, Bishop's one spot was maybe balanced. Now Joaquin's just going to, you know, dump on Bishop there. Yeah, I mean, a 3/6 Luna, obviously even 3/8 Gladiator. It's crazy what some of these cards have gone to. Like, back in the day, there's only a couple that could reach such heights, and it's like Thor is going up to a 3/10 when he gets the Mjolnir that A, shuffles your deck. You have to pull it. There's so much going on there. And then Gladiator's just like a 3/8. Dude, there is definitely some question marks. Or just Luna Snow being a 3/6 that also ramps. It's crazy.
Yeah, because like with something like a Thor, you are literally, you're diluting your deck.
Yeah.
You're diluting your deck, and you have to use the Lady Jane Foster to try to get it back, which is fine. It's a combo piece, right? But yeah, like remember, Bishop got nerfed from a 3/2 to a 3/1 on launch. In beta, he was a 3/2, was he not? And he was actually legit, but this is how far things have power crept, and it brings the next point of conversation. There's 2 more points I want to make, Cozy, and I ask you these questions. Can OTAs actually manage power creep, or is this something that is always just going to be a reality?
They can. I don't know if they will. Like I think what I said in mine Snapchat episode on my side is I think they need to be a bit more risky, and I don't even know if it's risky. Like giving Leader and Sandman a +1 is fantastic, but just give that +1 across the board, then do a couple other ones that you know need it, like the Bishops, right? Or the Lizard getting his thing not -4, make him what the old Lizard was. It can if they do that, but they have shown that they don't, right? Like Adam Warlock has been in his place for a long time. They do every now and then, and I think in year 1, like between 1 and 2, they did a lot of old cards. You know, just look at something like Ultron and what he became. But that's slowed down a little bit.
Yeah, it's fair, but we've clearly seen a lot of power creep. Even if you think about something like a Nightcrawler versus what Silver Sable was, like it's not even close. And Nightcrawler still finds its way into a couple decks here and there, but it's not nearly as powerful as Hydration Robber was, right? Like it's kind of crazy how that, like Nightcrawler's a 1/2 that moves. Hydration Robber is a 1/5 that moved. Like it's not even in the same ballpark. And of course, yeah, you control the Nightcrawler, but you kind of control the Bobbert as well, right? And I guess the last thing that I want to ask you, Cozy, on this topic, there is a very famous saying in card games that you either have power creep in card games or you have rotations, where you either power creep indefinitely or sometimes at some point there's a base set of cards and there's a rotation of cards. You can't play these cards anymore and new cards come in to replace those. You have standard in like something like a Magic the Gathering, right? There's like the standard formats, and then you have like the extended formats or the whatever, right? And so do you think, and this is a weighted question and hard to answer, so I almost feel bad asking it, but do you think that Marvel Snap just accepts the power creep or has to consider rotation in the future?
I think it's a neither. I think OTAs can solve it better than I would hate a rotation. I would suck.
I agree, actually, yeah. Rotation feels awful for what I think Marvel Snap is designed to be.
The solution is like, okay, so you take Rivals, for example. When you have these like hero shooters and stuff, it's tough because, take Overwatch and Smite and these other games, MOBAs, League of Legends. when they have a new hero, they want to sell the hero, and so they make the hero good, and then sometimes they nerf it. But when a game is free to play and all the stuff is free, it makes it so much easier that power creep doesn't exist, right? Invisible Woman and Mr. Fantastic came out. They're good. Invisible Woman's really good. Mr. Fantastic's so-so. But it doesn't matter because everybody got to play everybody gets them. Everybody gets them for free. And it's not as big of a deal if the older ones don't hold up, and if there's a new, because everybody has them. Power creep becomes an issue when you're gatekeeping. That's the problem.
Yeah, and actually a great example is this might be going off the beaten path a bit, but Heroes of the Storm did this a lot. Like me and my brother, we played a ton of Heroes of the Storm, which was like the Blizzard MOBA, and they would release their new hero. And when we say broken, like there's no way the designers even tried to balance these heroes. Like they were so broken that like my grandmother, who doesn't even speak English, who's never played a video game before, right off the boat Italian, would have looked at this hero and been like, this is broken AF, right? And they release them and they sell it for 2 weeks and then they dial it back a little bit and it's still broken. Another 2 weeks to dial it back a little bit. Like, bro, you know this card is absolutely, or this hero's bonkers broken, but it's because of this. The greenbacks, Cozy, that US dollar, so strong, and that's what you want. That's what they want. And at the end of the day, yes, you are right. When it comes to free to play, you don't necessarily have that problem, but Marvel Snap is free to play, but it's not free to acquire these cards. So you get these season pass cards, they come out. Okay, yeah, you got to pay for those. Yeah, you can acquire tokens over time, but guess what? We see bundles with 6,000 tokens. How expensive are they? I've not seen a 6,000 bundle token for less than $100 Canadian, so must be worth at least $100 or so, right? At the end of the day, like you're right. If you're going to gatekeep access to these cards, then power creep becomes an issue, and obviously rotation done as well. So yeah, I absolutely agree, Cozy. Was there anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think that covers it. I mean, I think that's what the options are, and you know, for a game out for 2 years, they've done a pretty good job with it. I would give them that, but it could get down a slippery slope.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where, like, you know, we all want to be armchair, you know, balance authorities on Marvel Snap, but at the end of the day, like, I think Glenn's doing a pretty damn good job. Like, it's hard, and as Marvel Snap gets larger in its card base, we're adding, you know, 5 cards a month, sometimes 6 cards a month. It's going to be harder because there's going to be more synergies, more ways to break the game. It's just like every single card now can break itself with every single other card that already exists. It's like the matrix of cards becomes more complicated. And so it's maybe not a problem for today, but a year from now, it just might be a problem. But you know what's not a problem, Cozy, is jumping to the mailbag and what is one of the weaker segues of the day. But what I will tell you is that we do have some fantastic questions. And we're going to, you know what, we've been starting with a lot of non-Snap questions. So we're going to kind of cleanse our palate here. We have a lot of non-Snap stuff too, but we're going to start with a Snap question. We're going to keep you Snap audience gamers engaged with a question from 6 rounds down that says, honestly, I would like to see what's next for alliances. They launched last year with minimal features and bad rewards. And this is something, this is me speaking now, this is something that they had mentioned that alliances, they did want to iterate on more often and improve on. Is this something you'd like to see as well, Cozy?
Dude, call me pessimistic. I don't think we're going to get a lot there in a while. I would like to see it. They doubled down on saying that there's going to be this is just the start. They want to see alliance wars and things like that. But I just think that they have bigger fish to fry. I think we're going to get the draft mode before that. You know what I mean? I just see this coming pretty late, and I'm glad they came out because it's a way to get a lot of more free stuff, right? Like, definitely, it was good that they came out as a whole. But it could be a while. It's a cool concept for sure. I just think they have other things they need to take care of first.
Yeah, if you just want to do something easy, second hitter, increase the bounty board so there's more options. Because honestly, I look at the bounty board, I'm like, I got to move 5 cards, and then I got to destroy my cards, and I got to play Mr. Fantastic with Scarlet Witch. Sick. Like, thanks, guys. Like it's always awful. Give us more options. They did add some additional quests that are just like spend energy quests, which I think are cool. That's fine. But like even small things like that, just make it easier. Like, it's so hard. I think a lot of people in the comments would say that they're not engaging with alliances because they're probably not getting those alliance rewards. Like the awards are too hard to kind of acquire, even if you have a large alliance. So it definitely needs some love. And like, yeah, the large development side would be beneficial, but even some small, just quality of life changes could be beneficial as well. Now, Alex Conardi made a comment because we had mentioned my knowledge of the United States of America's geography, and they said, being from Iowa, I immediately wanted to be offended. but I quickly realized that I also know nothing about Iowa. And so this was Cozy asked me what state that I knew nothing about. I said Iowa. And there was a lot of questions about this, and they said eventually you and I will have to like quiz each other on the geographies of Canada and the United States and see what we have. And that might be a fun like episode for another day, like a special episode we'll have to turn to, because I'd love to test Cozy's knowledge of Canada.
Nothing about Canada. Nothing. Like I know hockey. That's it. That I don't. I will get killed, and I can't wait.
You played hockey, didn't you say that once?
Mm-hmm. For sure. But I have no shot in. I know where Vancouver is and Toronto. That's it. That's my knowledge.
So you know how to find me, basically.
Barely. Probably not.
Well, it's way colder here. It's so funny because like I'm envious of the San Diego weather. I gotta tell you, man. I should never have come. I should never have come to San Diego, because now I always say, every time I'm driving and like my car's going sideways in the snow, I'm like, Coccia doesn't have this damn problem. Like, you know what I mean? It's like beautiful when I'm shoveling snow and I'm cold, it's like Coccia doesn't have this problem. Have you ever shoveled snow?
No.
I think I've asked you that before.
Definitely.
I think that's like, I'm having this deja vu. I've definitely asked you that.
I think I did in college, but no, that's it.
Nice. And the next question comes from GamerDank, and it reads, the fact that the devs could have just given us a pixel variant, an icon, and an I'm sorry emote, but instead they really went beyond, says a lot, and I appreciate it. And this is in reference to the compensation. And Sir Jack followed that up with, aside from the band compensation, the improvement to the Galactus pool on the web store is also pretty insane. Removing boosters from the pool and having 100 credits as a minimum. More stuff for free, please. This is something that we actually glossed over last week. They did change the web store.
No, we didn't. We talked about it. On the new era of
We
Snap,
did talk about it?
We talked about it. In the new era of...
Oh, man, I forgot. I thought we forgot, but I guess we didn't. Cozy, you're on top of things. Maybe I was just sleeping because it was like literally the next day. Like it was the middle of the night when we recorded, so maybe I blacked out at that point. But yeah, I think the conversation was great. You should have all received it from now. I know that there was some concerns that some people in like Puerto Rico and some other areas that they were like, did not get the US version. I think that's being rectified from my understanding from communications from Second Dinner. But I think they nailed the compensation, Cozy. How did you feel? Did you feel compensated?
Felt like Christmas, man. It was cool to get that bag. It was crazy. It was like, I think I saw a tweet someone said, it feels like they got their tax refund. I thought that was a good way to put it. Just all of a sudden you have all this like excess currency. I didn't get that many good variants, I'll be honest. I was like, I wish I would have gotten better. And my boosters were horrible. I don't know about you. I got like strong guy. But it was still cool. It was obviously a big win.
Yeah, it was a big win. And I got to say, actually, and on the topic of boosters, I really think boosters are one of those currencies in the game that makes no sense right now. And I still think that, you know how you have those fast upgrades in the store where you just automatically upgrade the card without needing the boosters? I think they shouldn't be resetting the boosters. Like if you have 25 boosters and you upgrade something to infinite, just let us keep the 25 boosters. Stop zeroing it. It doesn't make any sense. But we're going to close it today on Socratic Gambler, who had one of the funniest things I've heard in a while. And I laughed at this. Cozy trashing Pepsi is the most energized he's been on the Snapchat in a while. Cozy fighting illness, fighting whatever. You have had a hell of a challenge over the last couple of weeks. But when we brought up Pepsi, Cozy got absolutely fired up. Cozy, the question is, do you still hate Pepsi?
I definitely do. This is why I like filming at night, because I think Alex and I are a bit loosey-goosey right now, guys. It's 3 p.m. It's chill. It's not as saucy. Alex slurring the words. I mean, it's a beautiful thing when you film it at 1 a.m. But yes, I saw that comment, and actually it got a good chuckle out of me. I was very passionate. It's why we want to add some of these random subjects. I think it's fun. Opinions are a fun thing, buddy. And yes, I still hate Pepsi. Although I saw somebody say cherry Pepsi's better than cherry Coke. I might agree with it.
Oh, that's something we don't get a lot of. I don't think we have like the flavored colas like you guys do. Like I don't think I've ever had a cherry or...
Yeah, they were big. I don't know if you listeners know this or remember this. When Vanilla Coke and Vanilla Dr. Pepper came out, they were big. It was a movement. And then they kind of fell off. Some people still get them, but they fell off. For me, whenever I go to like, there's a place I go to called Firehouse Subs, Bangin' Subs. And they have like this machine. It's like, dude, it looks like an iPad. And it like, you can pick like a Coca-Cola and it's like pick your syrup. And every time I do that, I see it all come out. And I'm like, I don't want any of that in my body. I really shouldn't even have Coke, I guess. But I was like, I'll just take a Coca-Cola without the vanilla. But yeah, you're not missing much.
Okay. And I guess the final thing that I need to ask is when you get a Coke, is it diet or regular?
Always regular.
Okay, I was gonna say, okay, my wife's family gets they're a Pepsi family, by the way. This is crazy. They only buy Pepsi. Her dad loves Pepsi. He only buys Diet Pepsis. And every time he offers me a little bit, like he gets a little Diet Pepsi, puts a little rum in it or something like that for me, it tastes so bad. I'm like, this Diet Pepsi is awful. Like the difference between diet and regular is so just mind blowing.
If I'm going to
I
drink
can't
the
put
garbage,
myself through it.
yeah, if I'm going to drink that garbage, I'm going to drink the full garbage. You know what I mean? I'm not even the diet. Just if I'm going to go in, I go all the way in. You know, it's like trying to find candy that's like organic. I'm like, bro, I'm already putting trash in the system. Just might as well go full
You
trash.
can say that because you're yoked, buddy. If you looked like me, like a giant muffin, you'd perhaps be paying more attention
that's fair,
to the
actually.
quality of the
That's
Coke that
very
you're
fair,
taking in.
yeah.
Cozy confirming that I look like a muffin. You heard it here first, and we'll see you on the next Snapchat episode.